The galaxy was at war, a conflict so vast that even the stars seemed dimmed by its shadow. Humanity was fighting for survival against the relentless tide of alien species, each more terrifying than the last. Among these enemies, and sometimes reluctant allies, were the Dral'thor, a race of towering beings, 8 feet tall, with obsidian skin marked by glowing lines of bioluminescent energy. Their strength was unparalleled, their technology superior, and their traditions as alien as their appearance. Yet, even they faced an enemy so fearsome that they sought assistance from their former foes: humanity. The council chamber was silent as the Dral'thor emissary spoke, his voice a deep rumble that reverberated through the room. "An alliance is possible," Karath, the leader of their contingent, intoned. "But it requires trust. And trust can only be born of the bond." No one spoke. No one dared to. Humanity's delegation shifted uneasily in their seats. The bond was a Dral'thor ritual, something whispered about in hushed tones, even among their kind. It was a merging of minds and souls, an act that demanded complete vulnerability. No human had ever attempted it, let alone survived it. Captain Elena Vargas stood at the edge of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. She wasn't the most senior officer present, but her reputation had earned her a place among the decision-makers. Hardened by years of battle yet known for her empathy, Vargas was a contradiction that had baffled both her enemies and her allies. She listened intently as Karath continued. "The bond is absolute," Karath explained. "It will link one of your kind with one of ours. Through it we will know your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears. And you will know ours. It is the only way to stand together as one." The murmurs began. Generals and diplomats exchanged nervous glances. Some outright dismissed the idea as madness. Others argued that humanity could not afford to alienate potential allies. But no one volunteered. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on the room, each second dragging longer than the last. Vargas stepped forward. "I'll do it." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Captain," one of the generals said, his tone incredulous, "this is not your decision to make." "With all due respect, sir," Vargas replied, her voice steady, "someone has to. And I'm not asking for permission." Karatha's glowing eyes fixed on her, unreadable yet intent. "You understand the risk, human?" he asked. "The bond is not without cost. You may lose yourself entirely." "I understand," Vargas said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "But if this is what it takes to save humanity, then I'm ready." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by Karatha's slow, deliberate nod. "Then we begin at dawn," he said. Vargas took a deep breath, her mind racing but her resolve unshaken. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it, not for herself, but for the survival of her people. The weight of the galaxy's future rested on her shoulders now. Elena Vargas woke with a jolt, her body aching and her mind teetering on the edge of chaos. But within the swirling fragments of thought, there was a clarity she hadn't expected. She wasn't alone in her head. She could feel him, Karath, like a steady heartbeat in the background of her consciousness. His presence was alien yet familiar, a constant reminder of the bond they now shared. "You are awake," his voice echoed in her mind, calm and steady. "Barely," she replied, her own thoughts sharp and laced with exhaustion. "Does it always feel like this?" "It will pass. You are stronger than I expected." She sat up, her senses sharper than ever. The world around her seemed more vivid, every sound and movement amplified. But it wasn't just her perception, it was Karatha's too. She could feel his thoughts bleeding into hers, offering insights she could never have imagined. Tactical knowledge, strategies honed over centuries, and a deep understanding of the enemy they now faced. "Captain Vargas," a voice called out, breaking her concentration. A human officer stood nearby, his expression wary. "The council is ready for your report." She nodded, rising to her feet, her movements steadier than she'd expected. As she entered the briefing chamber, the tension was palpable. The human delegation eyed her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion, while the Dral'thor watched in silent approval. "The bond has been successful," she began, her voice firm. "Through it, I've gained access to the Dral'thor's tactical knowledge and their understanding of our enemy. We now have the tools to turn the tide of this war." Murmurs spread through the room. Some faces lit with hope, others darkened with doubt. "And what of you?" one of the generals asked. "How do we know you're still you?" Vargas met his gaze unflinchingly. "I'm still me," she said. "But I'm also more. The bond doesn't erase who you are. It strengthens it. Karath and I are connected, but we remain individuals. This alliance isn't about losing our identities. It's about using our strengths to survive." Karath stepped forward then, his towering presence commanding silence. "Your captain speaks truth," he said, his deep voice resonating in the chamber. "The bond has revealed much to me about your kind. You are reckless, emotional, unpredictable. And yet, you are capable of incredible courage and loyalty. These qualities will serve us well in the battles to come." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Vargas felt a surge of determination through the bond, a reflection of her own resolve mirrored in Karath. "We don't have time to debate this," she said. "The enemy is closing in, and we need to act now. Karath and I will lead the next assault. Together, we can coordinate our forces more effectively than ever before." There was resistance, of course. Humans weren't quick to trust what they didn't understand. But as Vargas laid out the strategy she and Karath had devised, a plan that combined human ingenuity with Dral'thor precision, she could see the doubt begin to fade. By the end of the meeting, there was no room for hesitation. The alliance was fragile, but it was real. And as Vargas and Karath prepared to take the field, she felt a strange sense of hope. They were no longer two separate forces fighting for survival. They were one.